Keith frowned and started thinking about how he could increase his spiritual energy points. He was a completely different person than before. He used to be poor, and even though he had the system now, he still thought about ways to make money, but things were different now. Money was important, but it was no longer the most important thing. He'd already learned from the system that if he obtained energy crystals, the system would level up, and he would obtain a huge benefit. As for what that benefit was, the system had already made it clear that the domain controlling function would be activated. As long as he grasped the domain controlling ability, his cultivation realm would increase along with it. This wasn't a physical ability like power and dexterity, but a realm one. Once he had a realm, he could unlock a magical power. If he could dominate many domains in the future, he could even become immortal. This was his ultimate goal. Compared to immortality, money was nothing. The reason he earned money was that he wanted to buy energy crystals to boost the system. He wanted to earn as much as possible so that the system could level up. This broadening of his horizons was accompanied by a change in Keith's state of mind. The boy from before had long disappeared. Now, even people like Magnus or Gwen Carrington were merely ants in his eyes. He was developing the mentality of a powerhouse. After puzzling over his situation for a long time, Keith decided it would be best to develop in a balanced manner and make himself an all-rounder. After figuring this out, he smiled and made his way to the bookstore. He still had a long way to go, and he knew that in order to succeed, he had to stay grounded. The most important thing right now was to get into Harvard. It would be best if he could get a top score on the entrance exam, as even that could be seen as dominating the area. Keith spent the whole morning reading textbooks. Just as he was about to go out and get lunch, his phone suddenly rang. It was his father, who excitedly filled him in. "That CEO wants to see me?" Keith said in surprise. Sam's excited voice came from the other end of the phone. "Oh, I didn't expect that he'd have an engagement with Strauss family so soon. You better dress up. You need to be there at 2 o'clock this afternoon." After hanging up the phone, a wry smile appeared on Keith's face. The wish he'd made as a joke had now come true. The Strauss family was truly a powerful family. The grandfather of the Strausses had built an empire, and although he'd retired now, he was still highly influential, not only in Summerfield, but across the entire country. The old man had 3 sons, and the eldest was in politics. Currently, he was the #1 figure in the state. The second son had served in the Army and was now the youngest and most promising general in the U.S. military. The third son was a businessman, and sadly, he died early, but not before passing his skills on to his highly capable daughter. Olivia Strauss was CEO of Olive Industries. On the surface, she had a total of $33 billion in assets and shares. Added to that, her family was so powerful that it made people's hair stand on end. Compared to Olivia, Magnus was nothing. Keith would never have imagined that the system would arrange for someone like her to be his wife. There were hot shots from all walks of life who wanted to secure Olivia's hand in marriage. All of a sudden, Keith had become their main target. Furthermore, he heard that Olivia was incomparably cold and elegant, and she had no interest in dating at all. If he ended up with a wife like that, he would be very lonely. But the benefits were also obvious. He could use the Strauss family's huge network to search for energy crystals. A connection to the Strauss family would also help him get into any industry he wanted. Thinking of this, Keith gazed at the sky. After a long period of silence, a faint smile appeared on his face. At 2 o'clock that afternoon, he arrived at the restaurant where they had agreed to meet. It was the most exclusive restaurant in Summerfield. Anyone who could afford to come here had to be important. The hostess glanced at the ordinary-looking young man in front of her, and although there was a hint of disdain in her eyes, she asked politely, "Sir, do you have a reservation?" Keith smiled and said, "Yes. May I ask where Olivia Strauss is sitting?" "Miss Strauss?" The waitress was shocked and quickly said, "You must be Mr. Sanderberg? I'll take you to her right away." Once she realized that Keith knew Olivia, the waitress immediately warmed up to him. She led Keith to a quiet corner of the restaurant where there was a table of 5 people. In the main seat sat an old man wearing casual clothes. He looked at Keith with a smile. On the other side of him were a young man and a woman. The man was about 26 or 27 years old, and he wore a suit. He looked handsome, but his eyes were filled with veiled hostility when he looked at Keith. The woman was wearing a relaxed black outfit. Her long hair hung down around her shoulders, framing a face that was truly beautiful. This woman was Olivia Strauss. Keith thought of all the beautiful women he'd seen before, but no matter if it was his ex-girlfriend, the young nurse from the hospital, or his beautiful gamer roommate, they paled in comparison to the woman before him. Only Quinn, his sergeant at the precinct, could come close, but Olivia looked at Keith with an unfriendly gaze, and the pretty girl beside her eyed him with undisguised disdain. Her eyes seemed to be saying, "A poor kid like you seriously thinks he's worthy of Olivia Strauss?" The hostess very sensibly withdrew. The first one to speak wasn't the senior gentleman at the head of the table, but Olivia. She snorted lightly and said, "You're late. I hate people who are late. You can go through the divorce procedures with me later." The first thing she said upon seeing him was that she wanted to divorce. Keith was slightly stunned. He looked at his watch, which showed 2:03 p.m. If that was the case, he really was 3 minutes late. He smiled and said, "Miss Strauss, we aren't married yet, so why would we have to go through a divorce procedure? If you're not happy with me, you can leave now and we won't get married at all." The group at the table was stunned. How dare this brat speak like that in front of old Mr. Strauss? Was he too stupid to know any better? Or had he done it on purpose? The young man scoffed, and Olivia's pretty friend sneered. She'd seen this kind of attention-grabbing method countless times before. Olivia looked at Keith and said, "Fine, I'll leave." She got up and was just about to leave, but old Mr. Strauss frowned and said, "Sit down." Hearing this, Olivia gritted her teeth and looked at Keith hatefully. After hesitating for a moment, she finally sat back down. Old Mr. Strauss chuckled. "Keith, my granddaughter has a temper. Don't mind her. Now, shall we introduce ourselves?" Keith smiled and said, "Oh, sir, you're too kind. If you're so famous, how could I not know who you are? You've dedicated your life to our country. Everyone knows and admires you." As he spoke, he looked at Olivia and said, "And Miss Strauss is often on TV. She's the most famous young entrepreneur in the country. Who wouldn't know her?" Olivia only looked at Keith coldly and didn't say a word.